Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I think we are obviously delighted to have Gail Schimmel with us and from the ARB, Advertising Regulatory Board. And I think it's just so important that we have these discussions because the work that Gail and her team do, for those of you who were on the call when we were chattering in the beginning, she's just been to New York to a global discussion on some of the issues facing advertising regulations in terms of sustainability and AI, and all of these things are really important. She's doing great work, and the organization is important for us to support and to understand. So Gail put out this notice a week or two ago around calling for code reviews. And we thought it might be a nice idea just to get her to kind of take a step back for us and tell us a little bit about the code, and then also what this code review is about and how we can get involved and who needs to pay attention. So on that happy note, we are recording, and we'll share the recording for whoever wants it afterwards. So Gail, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to start by just asking everyone to check their mutes because I am hearing somebody in the background. I think somebody's not on mute, so if you could check your mutes. I'm going to, first of all, I'm just so delighted there's so many of you interested, and I hope that I give you the information that you're looking for from this, but I'm not going to talk for all the time we have, so I will be open to questions at the end, whether it's a question about what I'm talking about or a question about something else to do with the ARB. I'm up for anything. You can ask me whatever you need to ask me, but I'll go through the presentation, and then we can do questions at the end when I stop sharing. And I'm going to, just in case anyone's at all confused, I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of what the ARB is, what the role of the ARB is, and then we'll get into the specific question of code review. And please admire my fancy PowerPoint graphic. I learned how to do it from TikTok. Okay. Just so quickly what the ARB is. The first thing is that many of you will be more aware of the ASA. And the ARB stepped into the shoes of I say here liquidated ASA, that's slightly misleading advertising. The ASA is still not entirely liquidated. It's in liquidation still. It will be in liquidation for the rest of eternity. But when the ASA went into liquidation, we decided as an industry, and the ACA was a big part of that conversation at the time, that what we didn't mind losing the ASA. What we didn't want to lose was self-regulation. And within a month, we'd started the Advertising Regulatory Board to administer the industry-owned Code of Advertising Practice. And I think that is the core of what we're discussing today. It is an industry-owned Code of Advertising Practice. You will see that, as far as I'm able, I very seldom and only by mistake ever refer to the ARB's code or our code. It's not our code. It's your code. We administer it for you. We deal with the complaints process for you, but it is your code. We look at the content of advertising. So any ideas you've had about how you want to change a rule about something that's not the content of advertising, you're in the wrong place. Please go away. I cannot change where the billboard is in relation to the road or how many ads you can have an hour or things like that. I only deal in content of advertising. We're a registered nonprofit company. And you can look at the MOR on our website if you're curious about that. I want to take a step back before we even talk about the code and talk about why self-regulation is important. Why was it that when the ASA went into liquidation, we didn't just go, you know what, nice experiment for 50 years, didn't work, let's throw that out. And the biggest reason is about creating a trusted advertising space. And what I always say is, when government said to us that load shedding would end. You don't have to answer because I can't see your thumbs up and that, but when I'm in the room with you, I ask people to put up their hands. Did anybody believe that load shedding would end? And sometimes there's one government guy in the corner who puts up his hand just to show support to the government, but nobody believed load shedding would end. Turned out they were telling the truth. For now. For now, they were telling the truth. Government communication is such an untrusted communication space that even when they are telling the truth, we don't believe what they're saying. We don't want your advertising to be landing like that. We want that when your clients make claims, it lands on ears and eyes that are willing to believe. How do we make sure that people are willing to believe the advertising space? We make sure that they know that there are rules that you are keeping, and that if you don't keep them, you will be called to account for that. And that is what self-regulation is about. That is the core of why you are all here supporting self-regulation, because you don't want your advertising to land like a government claim. There are other reasons as well. We want decision making to remain in the hands of the industry. If we don't self-regulate, government will regulate, and it will be a nightmare. It will be like anything else that government regulates. It will be slow, it will be expensive, it will be after the fact. We need to be fast because advertising is a fast-moving world. We need it to be cheap because we need consumers to be able to protect themselves, and we need brands to be able to protect themselves for less than it costs to go to court. We need it to be dynamic to change. We need to be able to, when there's a new issue, we cannot be making laws like government makes laws. Those of you who've been involved in R333, how many threes are there? 3337 about food advertising. Like, we've been talking about it for a decade now. And I think it will be another decade before it happens. We need to be more dynamic to change than that, and we need to follow the international gold standard. This is not something that we made up in South Africa. This is how it's done all over the world. There are self-regulatory organizations and self-regulation of advertising content all over the world. So when the ASA went into liquidation, there were three organizations that came together to start the ARB. The ACA, you guys, the ARB, and MASA. And those represent the core interest groups in the advertising space. And then the others joined NAB, which is a unique member because they are also bound by law in terms of the Electronic Communications Act, and various other industry organizations have come on. You'll see these are all industry organizations. Our membership model is an industry organization-based model where each industry organization then binds their members, and most of you in the room will be ACA members who are bound to our jurisdiction through your ACA membership. However, okay, I'll get to it, however, we are also binding in other ways, and there are other people who listen to us. We're binding through the Electronic Communications Act, which is binds broadcasters. It was very well drafted so that when the ARB stepped into the shoes of the ASA, the definition in this act actually allowed for that. We have international recognition from the international organizations of self-regulatory bodies, and we have an industry-owned code based on the international code. The two things I've already talked about, the importance of the industry-owned code, but the other aspect is that it's based on the international code. So as I start talking about code review, I'm going to talk about certain things that we cannot change. And those are things that come back to core international ICC principles of self-regulation of advertising that enable South Africa to be part of this global picture of advertising regulation. And you can see, okay, we're sadly a little bit alone and lonely in Africa. And Asia is also a bit of a challenge. But other than that, all over the world, this is a bit of an old slide, and there is actually Brazil has joined as well in South America now. I think it's got a little bit bigger in South America, but you can see this is a global picture of how we do things, and we need to remain in line with that global picture. Just a reminder that we are a reactive organization. We do not monitor advertising. We have to get a complaint before we can do anything. Please never say to each other, the ARB have complained about our advertising. The ARB do not care about your advertising enough to complain, I'm afraid. We respond to complaints from advertisers. We don't have the resources to monitor advertising in a fair way, because if you're going to monitor, you've got to monitor everything. It can't be that because I drive past a particular billboard every morning on my way to work, that billboard becomes the place where it's most dangerous to put dodgy advertising. And we are funded directly by industry. I'm not even going to talk about the funding. I hope I don't have a funding slide in here. I might. But I talked about the members being bound by the membership. We also do have that, and I'm not sure if there's anyone in the room who's not an ACA member. But if you have slipped through Gillian's strict protocols and you are in the room, and you don't want to become an ACA member, you can still do the right thing. You can sign a declaration or pledge saying that you are bound by the jurisdiction of the ARB. I want every ACA member after this meeting to please check whether your logo is on our website as a responsible agency, because if you are an ACA member, you qualify to be listed as a responsible agency on our website. You can use our responsible agency logo, which looks a little bit like the one that you're seeing at the top there, except it says agency instead of advertiser. You're part of the responsible ecosystem, and we would love to list you on our website, so please do check for that. Oh, I do talk about the funding model. Just so you know, we're funded by direct funding, which means we go to marketers and we ask them for money. Our system is mad. We ask them for whatever they're prepared to pay us. It should not work. It has many, many flaws. You do not have to tell me the flaws. I know the flaws, except for one thing. It works. The ASA went into liquidation with 6 million rand in debt. We currently have about 12 million rand as a buffer fund against the funding falling apart again, and also to protect us from litigation, because litigation is quite a big thing in the space we move in. Funding from agencies comes in the form of when you're desperately looking for your RSM points and you have forgotten to do an RSM campaign during the year. One of the ways you can get those 2 RSM points for the responsible social media campaign is a donation to the ASA and the ARB. Can you believe 6 years later, I'm still saying that? A donation to the ARB. And we tend to find that at the end of your financial years, we suddenly get a week before the close of the year, a desperate phone call. You've just realized that if you get 2 more points, you're going to be in the next category. And can you please donate us 300,000 Rand? Yes, yes, you may. With absolute pleasure, donate 300,000 Rand and get your 2 points. It's not 300,000 Rand, by the way. It's 2.5% of your net profit after something. After tax? I don't know what those letters stand for off the top of my head. Your BEE advisor can tell you how much it is. Sometimes it's 3,000 Rand, sometimes it's 300,000 Rand. Either way, we're happy to receive it. So the levels of ARB involvement are that. Members, industry bodies that bind their members, there is no fee for that. We do not charge the ACA to be a member of the ARB. Responsible advertisers, agencies, and medias, which are individual entities that bind themselves to our jurisdiction, again, no fee. And funders. As you see, we're doing our best to make it easy to be responsible and ethical and to become a member or a bound entity of the ARB. That's the background. Now we're getting into the code, because we are here on code review. We are here inviting you to submit any changes you would like to make to the code. And the first thing that's important there is that you know how to read the code. The code is on our website, and it is divided into sections and appendices. Section 1 deals with interpretation and definitions. It's been a long time since we've seen a change to this section. It has stood the test of time very well, but if you feel that there is something wrong with the way we are interpreting the code, this is perhaps the place to look to see what the rules are for us about how we interpret the code and to see whether there's some change you want to suggest there. Section 2 is the big one. If you read nothing else of our code, please go and read Section 2. It's the general principles. There are about 19 general principles there. Some of them we haven't used for years. Some of them we use every day. If you're going to read one clause, clause 4.2.1 on misleading advertising is probably the one clause that you should read. And it irritates me that it's got such a random numbering. It sounds like something like really random in the code, but it's not. It's the center of the code, clause 4.2.1. But section 2 is the general principles. A lot of these come from the international principles. Doesn't mean they can't change and doesn't mean that they can't be added to. Section 3 deals with specific industries. This is really a space where you can take your specific industry experience, your specific industry knowledge and see, do we have what we need to have in this section? Do we deal with the industry that you have been unsure about? Is there something you want to suggest about the way we deal with a specific industry? If your suggestion about a specific industry is small, it's a section 3 suggestion. If it's massive, it may be an appendix suggestion. On the whole, though, the appendices are managed by a specific member. So we have the alcohol appendix that belongs, if you can't see me, I'm doing inverted commas, it belongs to the Drinks Federation of South Africa. So we are aligned with their code in the drinks appendix. We have the cosmetics appendix, which belongs to the CTFA. We have the marketing to children one, which belongs to the CGCSA, and so on. You can have a look there. But that's where we have an industry that needs specific regulation more than just a clause for their industry. Often there, if you come to us with suggestions about those appendices, I'm going to send you to the member who manages that appendix, because that change has to come through that appendix. The newest appendix there, which is possibly one of the things I'm most proud of in my working life, is the appendix on vaping, which deals with not marketing to children is a big part of that, and that's something I'm passionate about, but also about making health claims, and that's with the Vaping Products Association of South Africa. If you work in an industry that has a member body in that industry that is not a member of the ARB and maybe needs an appendix, please put them in touch with me. We always want to grow it. We always want to make it better. We always want to serve all industries that fall within the advertising space. And then finally, we have the procedural guide. And the procedural guide is actually the place where we make the most changes every year. We do this code review every year. Some years it's massive, like obviously the year that we changed from being the ASA to the ARB, it was massive because we had to change every time it said ASA to ARB. We've had big changes, we've had small change years. Last year was a small change year. So I think this year maybe might be a bigger one. The procedural guide is often where you might have gone through our procedures and picked up that something is not clearly worded, or a particular situation you found yourself in is not provided for, or you found yourself in a situation where the wording of the code, while absolutely clear, really didn't work in a fair way for you. I am going to draw you back, though, to certain things that we cannot change. We cannot change basic international norms. Do not come to me and say you want to be able to advertise without substantiating your claims. I am not going to put that to the Code Review Committee, because we are not going to change that. The pillars, the international norms that are the pillars of ethical advertising are that it should be legal, decent, honest, and truthful. So those are kind of the pillars that those Section 2 principles are built on, are legal decency, honesty, and truthfulness. We also cannot change things dictated by law. So, for example, there is a section of our code that is about the VAT Act. I cannot change the VAT Act. Beyond me. I also, really important one, guys, cannot change the situation around comparative advertising, because that comes down to the Trademarks Act. I also wish that you could do fun comparative advertising, but the Trademarks Act doesn't allow you to use another advertiser's trademark, and therefore fun comparative advertising becomes out of the question. There are also certain international procedural norms that we cannot change and do not want to change. So one that comes up particularly from this element of our industry is you annually ask me, why do we react to one complaint? And that is one of those things that is an international norm. There is a very good reason that it's an international norm. It is because one is the least arbitrary number. If you said, can we make it 10 complaints, that you have to get 10 complaints before you do anything? What if we get 9 really valid complaints about a really, really valid issue, but one complaint is not there? More realistically, what happens, because first of all, consumers don't complain. We never get 10 complaints about anything, unless It's the mad people. And guys, the mad people are active out there. 75% of our complaints we do not share with the advertiser, we deal with at first level. Why? Because we don't have jurisdiction, or because we don't get the information we need, or because people are mad. We don't send it on to you or your clients when the people are mad, and people are mad. The ASA once received 2,000 complaints about an ad that allegedly had a picture of the Last Supper and said Jesus gets his chips. We went back to the 2,000 complainants and said, please, can you send us a copy of the ad? The ad did not exist. Nando's could not provide us with the ad. It was supposed to be a Nando's ad. Nando's investigated. They could not even find a fake ad, because apparently some people have a hobby of making fake Nando's ads. Need to get out more maybe. But it wasn't a fake Nando's ad. It wasn't a real Nando's ad. But 2,000 people had been angry enough about an ad that they had not seen, that they complained about it. And that is why numbers do not matter. One is the least one valid complaint is better than 2,000 mad complaints. Adisha, I think that you are not muted. If you could just mute yourself, please. Thank you. And then there are also certain legal procedural requirements that we cannot change. For example, the advertiser has to have a chance to respond to the complaint, and that is never going to change because that is the law. We are regarded by the law as an administrative body. I'm sure you're all aware we have been mightily tested by the courts in the last few years. In fact, we were back in court last week and came out of that. I will share it as soon as we have the judgment, but we came out of that really strongly, really well recognized by law. An advertiser, Bliss Brands, has been found in contempt of court for failing to comply with our decision that they took on review. So recognition by the law, but having that recognition by the law, having our decisions hold up on review, means really complying strictly with the law. So there are certain things that legally I cannot change. What are we looking for? We're looking for things that are not worded clearly, that when you've read the code, you just haven't had a clue what we're talking about. Please bring these to my attention. I am passionate about plain language. I'm passionate about having it that you clearly understand what the code says. We sometimes are actually, you might see me glancing up as I speak. I've got a list on my whiteboard of things that when I read it, I was like, huh? What does that mean? How am I supposed to apply it? And we're going to change those in this code review. Typos, they are there. We are human. We started the ARB really quickly. So there's some, for example, we've picked up recently that in Appendix J, there's something that refers to Clause 8 when it should refer to Clause 9, and things like that. New issues. Maybe you are aware of something that is the hot new problem, and you can see a way that a rule could address that hot new problem. If you bring me a rule, remember, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to weigh it up against my legal requirements. And if it passes that test, I'm going to share it with the industry via our board. And the industry is going to have input on whether they think that that should be in the code or not. If it's something really big, we might workshop it. If it's something that's really going to change the face of advertising regulation. So, for example, please all look out. Early next year, we will be doing a workshop on our new sustainability code. And that's something we want input on, we want discussion around, we want it to be an industry agreed document. And then also procedures that you find cumbersome. Please be realistic here. You find it cumbersome answering us in 5 days, I know. I'm not going to change it, because 5 days is about the most we can give you and still claim to be a fast-paced decision-making body. We can have another conversation about our procedure, how you can get extensions, blah, blah, blah. But so be realistic in the procedures you find cumbersome. One of the things, for example, if any of you have ever been involved in an appeal, you might know that our code still refers to making 12 hard copies of the appeal record. I can think of nothing worse than one of you delivering 12 hard copies to me of the appeal record. That is no longer how the world works. We will be making provision for that in this code review. But anything else, anything that you see, but those are the kind of things we typically want to see. And then here are the ways that you can be in touch with us in case you don't know. I'm begging you all to sign up for our newsletter, because this tells you about training opportunities. It tells you about developments in self-regulation industry. It invites you to make input when you should. It just keeps you in touch with us. My email address is there. My email is an open door. Our Twitter, I'm really struggling to say X because I hate Elon Musk so much, but our X handle is there. We do share things on X. We're quite active on LinkedIn. I personally am terrible at LinkedIn, but luckily Yasmin is very good at LinkedIn. And that's another place you will immediately see our communications. And I'm going to stop the share now, and I am going to open it up to questions. And I'm going to look at why my thing is not charging.
Thanks, Gail. Any questions?
Sorry, I'm looking very concerned because
Gillian, it's Esme.
Hi, Esme.
there we go, we're charging. I can focus again.
Alcohol advertising. That's our biggest bugbear at the moment. As you're aware, the government has dropped, it's 18, you know, but some of the alcohol advertisers had their own code. In order to appear in an ad, you had to be 25 and older. Is that still viable? Is that still happening?
So that is the rule that they are complying with. The new code is on our website. We carry the same code that they carry, the Drinks Federation of South Africa. And for some reason, I have a block to remembering whether that code says 21 or 25. But 25 is the thing that they all seem to be complying with. I think because some international jurisdictions require 25 rather than 21. I think our code requires that you're not a minor.
Yeah.
But 25, 25, we actually yesterday had a complaint where someone said that, wow, there are all these young people in this ad. And the advertiser came back to us and said, everyone's over 25. If you require their birth certificates from us, we can provide them. I think 25 is a safe place because it means that when you do, a 19-year-old who looks like a 14-year-old, we're not going to go, we don't really care what their birth certificate says. We care what impact it makes on the viewer. And so I think 25 is safer, but if I'm open to correction, but I think the code currently just says not a minor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have a printed out version in front of me to look. So please have a look at the code on our website. It is the same as the Drinks Federation code, and it is the same. Some of them have internal codes as well, where they internally decide to make it 25.
That wasn't an internal code at the time. Listen, I'm the dinosaur here. It was, at the time, and when I worked for the various agencies, it was subscribed to, absolutely. And birth certificate check, the only difference was, I remember when Joe van Niekerk needed to appear in an ad and he was under, I think he was 21 or something. And because he was part of a sports team, they're
very strict rules about use of sports teams and celebrities in advertising for alcohol.
They gave him a bit of a leeway. But as far as I remember, I just wanted you just to reiterate, because I'm the one that gets the complaints. And then
send them to us. We'll deal with them. We're very good at the mad people.
I know. Gillian's my go-to. She knows.
Gail, there's a question from Kate. How do we subscribe to your newsletter? Can't find a link on your website.
It should be on the website. I'm going to go in right now, but otherwise, if you contact Yasmin at arb.org.za, and she will guide you there. If you go to about the ARB, there. If you go to about the ARB, it's actually a thing saying subscribe to newsletter.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's how you do it. About the ARB, subscribe to newsletter, or email Yasmin and she will put you on if filling in forms is not your best.
Perfect. And I just wanted to say, I mean, for those of you who, I mean, you might all be very familiar with this, but for those of you who haven't been onto the website, there's so much interesting information here. And you know, if you do have clients in any of these areas, it's really good to go and obviously read these detailed, as Gail was saying, these detailed sector appendices, and there's the vaping one at the bottom there. And I think what the ARB does so well is to keep really abreast of all of the new things that are happening. And there's a lot of interesting information, and those newsletters are rich sources of interesting bits.
And if
So
I could add to that, Gillian, that the rulings, to read the decisions that we make. First of all,
yeah,
they're often a lot of fun to read, but they also
yes,
keep you
I
up to
enjoy
date.
them. And it's a good learning. It's a good, you know, to say like, oh God, I didn't know I shouldn't do that or whatever. Any other questions? Wimpy says, thank you for doing such important work. Well done.
Thank you.
What's your timing on the review, Gail? When do you want people to
So
submit?
we had left it open until the I've just seen there's a big one question here. We'd left it open till the end of October. But that being said, you know, if you come to us and you say, listen, we're still getting our act together, we want to say more about this, it's not a hard and fast thing. We suck the end of October out of our thumbs. So the thing is that we have to try and go through the process of me vetting it, putting it to the industry and having it ready for approval at the AGM in March, which sounds like a long time, but it's not really. So that's why we give the deadline. But if you know that you want to make a submission but you don't have time, just let us know. I see
I
someone.
see in the chat, Robin's just written about section 21.6. Do you want to talk about that? I don't know if it's a question or a...
No, I don't think it's a question. I think it's just the clarity on the age of.
Yeah, just clarity. Sorry.
Yeah. That's great.
So it's at least 21. Is that what it is?
Yeah, and I think it's actually to Gail's point is making sure that they don't look young. I think there's a discretion sort of thing in that. Although it's 21, don't make them look like they're 16.
Yeah.
Still.
But that's for celebrities.
Yeah.
It's celebrities who must be over 21. I think that your background people, I'm not sure. I think your background people can be under 21 but over 18. But I would not. I really would not. I just give them
we've
some
always done
facial hair.
25, so
just
probably a
give
safe
them
place.
a few wrinkles and facial hair, and then you won't get into any trouble. But then they won't be beautiful. But yeah, it's a balance.
But I mean, Gail, I think your point that it's not the birth certificate that counts; it's the impact or the perception that they're creating, and that's really useful information.
Yeah.
So I think if there are no more questions, we
I'll also just tell you, because I think a lot of you might be looking at this and dealing with it. One of the next hot topics where we probably are going to introduce an appendix or a detailed code is the gambling advertising. It's completely out of hand. I have a meeting with the National Gambling Board tomorrow to discuss just how we can work together. Just it's like the vaping, it's got a little bit out of hand. They should be able to advertise, but in a responsible way and not to minors. All these sin industries, it's not rocket science. But we need to be stepping.
I have seen that Australia's banned gambling advertising, I think almost in its entirety.
Yeah, and you know, if we don't self-regulate it, that's what's going to happen. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room are making a lot of money out of it. Whoever has got Hollywood Bets as a client, you're making a fortune out of them. You don't want their advertising banned. So that's also where self-regulation is so important, because if we don't self-regulate and then industries get banned, alcohol has managed to fight off a complete ban by showing how well they work as a self-regulated industry. And you know, that's what we want to achieve for every legal industry.
Interesting. Well,
whatever we might personally think about all those ads.
Yeah. Okay, good. We'll keep us up to date on that. And thank you very much.
It seems to be a new message.
Oh.
It's just a thank you.
Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Please, guys, email me if you've got any questions, and if there's anything else you want me to talk through.
There's a
Then,
nice question here from Sesh. Do we have codes on AI voice?
Okay, so I am about to share, if you're asking are there rules about AI, I am about to share a newsletter about it, a detailed newsletter about it. So please sign up to the newsletter. The spoiler alert summary is no, we don't, and we don't need them. Because really AI is just another tool, like green screening was a tool, like what's that thing we used to do to photos where you made the faces look nice was a tool, photoshopping was a tool, AI is another tool. If you use AI to a point that it's misleading consumers, then it's misleading advertising. There are a lot of dangers, and in the letter that I'm preparing for you now, I highlight the dangers of using AI. But when it comes to the codes, we are already seeing that the codes we've always used address the real danger.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll be sharing the recording. Thank you, Gail. And
Absolutely.
we'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks all.